What's up, Godless fans? LA is on fire, and so are our opinions about the last 4 episodes of Godless. Stick around.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
All right, guys, we are here with the last 4 episodes of the Godless limited series on Netflix. We have tons of opinions because it was crazy and there was a lot of guns and just what? But first, why don't I have my lovely co-hosts introduce themselves?
Hi, my name is Ashley Sullivan. You can find me on Twitter at AshleySX.
Hey guys, I'm Mina, and you can follow me on Instagram at Mina Makes Magic.
Hi guys, I'm Krista, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Krista Flentje.
And I'm Natalee Dyer, and you can find me across all media platforms at Natalee Dyer, NATALEEDYER. All right, you guys, we have finally watched the last 4 episodes of Godless. What were your thoughts? Just like preliminary.
I mean, I loved the show. I have some issues with the show, but overall, I loved it. I actually got a little emotional the last episode. I loved Roy's character, and I loved his journey. I want to see more of him, and I want to see more of Alice, and I was thoroughly entertained.
Yeah, I thought the acting was phenomenal and the cinematography was really great, but for some reason, I didn't feel like I could get into it that much. I felt like even from last week, the build was super slow, and then it finally picked up, but like by that point, I feel like it kind of lost me already, and I felt like my expectations of the show, like even though it was like really, really well done, I think it's just not the genre that I'm in love with, and for some reason I wasn't obsessed with it.
Yeah, I feel you on that, but I think what kept me is that each episode did seem to get a little bit better, like more build-up, more action, which kept me in until the end. And the last episode I was emotional, so I definitely got a little more attached than I thought I did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think overall it was really good. But yeah, definitely some issues, which we'll get into. Yeah. But it was good.
If they like condensed it, I would be totally on board.
Yeah.
But I think it's just too slow, and usually like this is like for a Western, I like consuming that as a film and not as like hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
Somewhere to even binge that, you kind of get worn out watching it.
Definitely. So. I completely agree, and I would say that it was partially that it wasn't marketed as we expected it to be. I think we all signed on to this panel with the idea that it was going to be a completely, a woman's show,
right?
And then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. That being said, it was still very good. It was a solid effort. We still have great characters, and we have amazing cinematography.
The score. I thought the score was amazing.
Score, yeah.
I loved. I mean, the music really brought the show together.
Yeah. So it had a lot of elements. It had a lot more potential it could have gone with, but it's still really good for what it is.
Yes.
And I think the bits that we did get of the women, like how it wasn't as marketed in the trailer as we thought it was. The bits that we did get were good bits. I mean, there were the personality types and the characters with the females that we got, even though it was little. I think they were really great.
Like some things that we don't even see on regular TV as is.
Exactly. So it was still something, not enough of it, but it was
And I think something that's important to point out is this show actually started out as a screenplay for it to be made into a movie.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it took Scott Frank, who wrote this. He had this script for years. It was really hard for him to get it made, and then he brought it to Netflix, and Netflix didn't want it as just a movie. They wanted it as a 7-part series. So I'm sure that was also, tying into what you were saying.
Yeah.
Because it was drawn out.
It's not what it was written for.
Yeah.
Like perhaps they could have made it just like a
4
even just 6 episodes.
Or just actual 30 or 40 minutes.
I mean, the first 3 episodes alone were character introductions. You don't need 3 hours to be introduced to characters.
There's just so many people, too,
I can be introduced to these characters in 1.5 episodes. You don't need to drag it out for that long.
Right. Which is exampled with our German girl, who she's in the background. What was her name again?
Martha.
Martha. She's in the background. We see her every once in a while, and then we get an episode where we truly learn about her. And I felt for her, and I wanted her to survive.
Right.
Based on probably like a 10-minute scene.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that what was interesting is if you took apart a lot of these characters, you could easily make a show just based on them, like on
Yeah,
Maggie,
true.
for example, on
Alice.
Alice, on Roy, on Frank. So yeah, there's a lot of information to digest.
There's a lot of big central characters, and then we had so many little side characters to keep track of as well that
Right.
you get lost in all the different moving parts,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to jump back in sort of where we left off last week. We're doing it a little bit differently this time just because we have so much to get through. And we're going to start with Sheriff is following Frank. And Frank comes upon a pox house.
Right.
What did you think was going to happen there? Do you think he was truly trying to help these people?
I mean, I absolutely was skeptical as to him being so sort of loving and or concerned with this girl mainly who was taking care of everyone who was sick at the house. I didn't for any moment assume that he was just going to be all good and that he was there just to be selfless.
Do you think maybe he saw parallels between her and himself because his crew is so out there? And
they take
isolated.
Usually they take in those types of people that are all alone.
that
no
are
one left.
rejected.
But I think what it really says, and it's more of a story about what kind of place the West was during these times, that Frank, a man who kills children and women and families, can sometimes be the kindest person in the room, even if it, just for a couple minutes, but there's literally no one else there.
Right.
And he ends up being that only person, even though it doesn't end well. I just think it says a lot about the Old West and those godless times,
Right.
according to the show.
I think it also goes into what we've been talking about Frank, like it's sort of the angel of death, right? And so while, yes, like one aspect it is like very selfless and he can be very kind and concerned for others, it's also a way for him to, exact that power.
Right.
So, which is also selfish.
Right.
Yeah.
Last thoughts on that? Do you guys think that he actually killed them all, or did he let them die out naturally?
He had to have killed the girl, right? I mean, we don't have a timeline, though, but I feel like they drove off or rode off that same day, right?
Well, the
because he sent them off to the twins to dig the graves.
Right.
Right.
The Devlin twins, when they're chopping the wood before Frank comes out to have them go run errands or they make it clear and they say that as soon as Frank gets sick of
Being the nice guy.
yeah, he will save them. So he will, to me that meant kill them.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's what I thought. We also have the sheriff finally tracks down Frank. It's sort of a accidental moment. You have the bees buzzing, so you kind of know he's there. What did you think about that interaction?
I want to talk about the bees. 'Cause
Sure.
I
They
just feel like this is just one of the many ways they actually did a good job with symbolism, and it's like the locust thing we were talking about last episode. I feel like it was kind of like this omen of bad things to come. It was like highlighting
You're totally right.
some
'cause
sort of negativity.
It's there in the end, too, which we'll discuss, but it's throughout the whole series we've seen it.
Yeah. Like, I don't think bees are ever used in a positive way. I mean, unless you spin it in the sense like, oh, they're responsible for pollination and birth of lush forestry or flowers, whatever. But it's always it has historically always been used as kind of this terrible omen.
It's funny you say that because the bee actually symbolizes community, brightness, and personal power, as well as follow the bee to find your new destination.
Which makes sense with Frank.
Not with a swarm of them, though.
But it's usually
not with
just
Frank, I would say
one.
with the sheriff.
Yeah, that too. But he's always trying to find where he's going next to find Roy, so it could kind of work for him too. Like his finger's always pointing him in the on his old hand.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I also
definitely with Roy too.
I read that it says in ancient lore,
the sheriff.
bees were messengers from the gods, and they represented the soul. So
Okay.
Am I the only one who thinks there's a negative?
I mean, I don't like bees.
Clearly, you've been stung by one or two before.
Right.
I think bees are just an interesting one. I wouldn't have ever known that had I not researched it for this show because you wouldn't think bees, besides pollinating, would be really a good thing.
Right.
Especially we have the mindset of African killer bees and the ones that chase you down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So maybe like they're
Chasing
like
down.
not
I mean,
everything
they're
is so
relevant,
clearly
yeah.
defined as
Right.
good and evil. Maybe that it
It
kind
yeah.
of this is me kind of like stretching this a little bit.
I
based
mean,
on
they're
what you
there.
guys are
You're right
saying,
about
but,
that. Yeah.
You know, it's that not everything is so clear cut. There are like
Ah.
there's like a dual functionality to the B symbolism, and it's up to us to extrapolate what that meaning is.
Definitely, and that's pretty much what the show is about. Most shows these days is that there is no black and white.
Right.
It's all gray, and that's the bees itself.
Our
It's-
interpretation of it, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and jump back to LaBelle and Grig, our snake of a journalist.
So awful.
I take back everything I said about integrity in this guy.
yeah.
Right?
He has none.
Awful.
You think he's cool, and then
Ugh.
our first hint is that he propositions Sadie Rose, which I have to make a correction because I think last week I was saying that the teacher was Sadie Rose when really her name is Kelly
Right.
Dunn. And Sadie Rose is the girl with the baby. There are too many names.
There
exactly.
are.
I
It's
can't
a
keep
lot to
track. I
remember.
really
I mean, it's a
can't.
lot of women in LaBelle. It's hard.
It is.
So, I mean, yeah, we thought that Grig was a good character, and he's turned out to be
Not at all.
No, in fact, I had more disdain for him than I did with Frank
at the
end of
end,
show.
I've
hated
grown
him,
to
yeah.
despise him. Yeah.
No, he was awful. And you know what? He was a coward. Like, Frank, to me, was not a coward like this guy was. And I couldn't stand
I don't think any of the characters are more of a coward than he is.
No.
Because they don't shoot off their guns. There's all the women in LaBelle see Bill as a coward because he doesn't
Right.
fight. Roy is constantly talking about you don't want to shoot because you don't know who you'll hit. Whereas this guy, he's not shooting, but he writes the
He's
article.
writing these stories and he's not a part of it in any way. Like, he goes to the town and hides
Yeah.
it's just everything he does is
Do you know what?
so cowardly.
What it feels like? It feels like hashtag activism. You know, I feel like in a
Yes,
lot of
sure.
ways it's so reflective of
Right.
our society right now and how a lot of us, you know, claim to be social justice warriors and we say stuff like pray for Vegas and pray for this
Right.
place. But what do
From,
we
like,
really
the comfort
do
of our homes,
other than just make like one tweet and then forget about it
Yeah.
the next week when it's no longer relevant in the media?
or when
It's
there's
like
something new to.
Yeah,
a
to
way
worry
to
about.
seem like you're involved and like have this self-righteousness when you don't. And I think it's like interesting that they put that in there because I don't think like times have changed. Like obviously technology has changed dramatically, but you know, it's
He
there's
just loves the
definitely
drama.
a parallel there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he really wrote their death sentence with that article. So I don't know what positive, he could have gained from that.
He does it to, like,
was-
build new, better stories.
Yeah.
He just, it's awful.
Well, he wants to be seen as like the true journalist.
Right.
And
So that means him getting the best pieces
right.
and inventing them. So he has to make them happen sometimes
Right.
to get that.
He got
Yeah.
tired of talking about old lady Sally's
Right.
cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like-
Got something juicy.
Another town has smallpox.
Right.
Right.
But and it's not just that though. I mean, like his whole character. I think it was important that what you're touching upon with
Miss Sadie Rose.
yes, how he propositioned that if she did something to him, sexually,
Implied sexually, but yes.
right. So basically, if she prostituted herself for him, he would cover any costs
Yeah.
for her new business.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And place an ad for $50. A $50 ad at those. In those
Yeah.
days.
Right.
No.
One, she would have been getting ripped off, and I was very happy that Callie Doon stepped
Yeah.
in.
All these
Yes.
things repeat themselves. Like everything
Yeah.
that's going on in the industry right
Mm-hmm.
now,
Exactly.
with
absolutely.
these sexual harassment allegations and the Harvey Weinstein thing, the Bill Cosby thing, which was even before that, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like this crazy ripple effect with, I mean,
Right.
obviously all varying degrees of sexual assault. Like you
Right.
can't compare what Louis C.K. did to what Harvey Weinstein did. They're terrible,
But they're
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 different.
still
Right.
under the same umbrella, just varying degrees
It's-
of sexual assault.
It's sort of Greg and Frank and his crew are under the same umbrella, not necessarily the same level,
Right.
but they are still.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Well, and then even the guy, the what's his name, Ed Logan and his crew, who are there to protect the women, and once they move into LaBelle, basically the women are, in a way, like
They even have that
prostituting
montage
themselves.
of them buying hairbrushes for them, and
Right.
we're making everything better and getting you all the nice things you always should have had. And yeah.
And you have Charlotte, and didn't catch her name, but we call her Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was like, "That's her." Wait, no, it's not. Wait. And they're celebrating, they're partying, which was a great
Getting
song.
Yeah,
It
it was
was,
a great
but
song.
You're celebrating for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable. To
It was
watch.
super uncomfortable, and yeah, it was just not needed. I mean, it was sort of needed, but I didn't need.
Yeah. We got you. We get what you're saying.
So let's go ahead and jump over to Roy and Alice, who have a wonderful time. They have a sort of montage. They're breaking all the horses.
Yes.
She's working on the well, and then he breaks all the horses, and he helps dig the well. Did you guys enjoy that section? Or
Just a way of humanizing
yeah,
Roy,
it's-
painting him in like this. Oh, he's the good guy, and there's more to him than just like this terrible person. They tried to they were really Team Roy the whole thing. They want you to really like him and
Right.
completely overlook all the stuff that he's done.
we never actually saw
See him do anything.
We
he's
saw
terrible.
one thing.
It's
The-
the,
when
it's
shoot
the
the-
backstory of
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were last week. We were really curious, like, what would we find out about Roy? And yeah, I mean, there was
We got more of like how he came to be in the group and why he left the group.
right, but
yeah.
nothing. I didn't.
Because
I
obviously
personally
he was
seen
with
any-
him for years, so we don't see a lot of the meat. of
Right.
this-
We don't see the horrible things that I'm sure he did with the gang, but
Yeah, I'm sure he was like a bystander in a lot of them too.
Yeah.
Which is
so.
just as bad, but it,
right.
Yeah.
especially if you're partaking in the
Right.
act.
But I think it's important that he was taken when he was so young and vulnerable, and the fact that he got out of it, doesn't erase whatever terrible things he did. But I think, and if you look at gangs even today,
Yeah, so many parallels. Same
It's
exact
like-
thing. Even with terror, even with ISIS, they specifically prey on
Yes.
people who have no family, who are children. Even the children with families, they go after them, they take them hostage, kidnap them, and then they indoctrinate them. And
Exactly.
obviously these kids are going to grow up believing that they need to commit all these acts to achieve salvation or whatever. When you take a kid in, the kid can't think for themselves.
Right.
I think that's a huge part of why racism still exists. It's cyclical. You
Yeah.
grow up
Oh,
with
100%. Yes.
parents who think a certain way, and how hard is it for you to break away from that cycle when you're not only surrounded by parents like that, but probably the same community thinks that way, depending on where you're at. If you're not if you're in a
Absolutely.
specific place where you don't get to interact with, culturally diverse
right
people and
I think that's
communities.
why it's great that Roy he was able to learn and find his way out of that circle.
He just gets fed up is basically what it comes to.
And he
of
does-
being the bystander.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this whole sequence is him learning that he would like to have a quiet life.
Right.
And in addition, Roy and Alice end up breeding the male that he's found in the overturned stagecoach. And I think that's very telling of him going through what is a basic thing we're all supposed to do as a child that he never did, which is learn to read.
Right.
Yeah.
He's finally learned to read, and so perhaps he has now learned a different way of life rather than seeing it strictly as do what Frank says.
Right.
So I think that was sort of a very important thing.
And also, I think it was important. There was a lot of emphasis placed on him fathering or being a father
Yes.
figure to Truckee, and sort of undoing all the things that Frank did to him.
Sort of like a reverse upbringing for him.
Yeah.
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 So speaking of racism, we might as well jump into when Roy and Truckee and Alice deliver the horses to the town.
The town.
Once again, Truckee encounters Logan or
Ed
Logan.
Logan. I think they called him Mr. Ward.
Yeah.
That's what it was in my notes, so maybe. I'm not sure.
Name Ed
at this
Logan
point.
either way.
Which is, yet again, it's the cycle. And how do you deal with that when you're being put down consistently?
Oh, right. Not in a violent way.
Yes. Yeah. Because he speaks up and he says, "Why don't I knock you off that horse?"
Right.
And Roy says, "Do you feel better?" He says,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
I do
Yeah.
feel better."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just another example of Roy also really pushing that I'm not going to teach you how, you need to learn other ways to live. And it can't always be violent. You know, violence should be the last.
I agree.
You know, last thing that you're gonna do.
Yeah, because he's fed up. He's like, I'm not going to teach you about the guns. Like, I'm not going to teach you about it.
Like, this is a reoccurring conversation, and every time it's going to end the same. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sort of like you need diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's looking to see raising children in that way so that they don't have to go through what he went through.
Right. And yeah, I do wonder, and maybe this is what you meant, but that Roy was even more, placed more emphasis on that with Truckee especially, because he, you know, Truckee's in a completely different ballpark than Roy growing up, that, you know, he's always going to face, you know, situations of being, you know, discriminated
Yeah, it's
against.
kind of one of those things, too, for Roy. You haven't seen the things I've seen, and what you've been kind of living in this different life, this
Bubble.
safety net. Yeah, and it's a way of him being like, you should be so glad that this isn't a way you've been brought up and that you have to use guns, you know, at this point.
Right.
We're going to jump right into flashbacks, because there were a lot of
So many.
flashbacks in the last 4 episodes of this show. I think 50% of what we saw was
Yes.
a flashback.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bit.
Is this like
Gymnastics
a
for the brain.
Tarantino thing or
Right.
what?
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
A little bit.
We had the sort of black and white with the rose color.
Oh, yeah.
It got more color as
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Like the mining scene in particular was so
Subtle.
it was like a parade. The way they walked. Did you really walk them to the mine? It doesn't make it any less sad, but every day you guys just paraded through the town laughing and
like,
smiling.
yeah, kissing the hugs, everyone.
And then you
so
just all
happy.
sit there in a lot. Like, don't you guys have kids to raise? Where are the kids?
I'm so glad you guys said that, because I was thinking this is not how it
They
really
just-
was.
yeah,
was it?
I think they
actually
just
they
wanted-
did.
Maybe
If
it
you
was,
had a-
Because they had nothing else to do. The women all stayed home.
But also it was
like,
such a
watching kids.
dangerous
Job.
job
That's
that
true.
it was every day. It was even
it was a
into like
bit
the
much,
60s,
though.
I think.
It
It
was
was
so
people
bad.
get up
Yeah,
to say bye
you're
because
right.
it's so dangerous.
It was just the
No,
fact that
it's not.
after they all kissed them and made them their lunches, they held
Right.
hands and skipped through the streets of the town and then
Right.
waited as they went down into the
Yeah.
mine.
It's
They-
like-
and wait.
And I feel like they stayed there until the accident were still there, and then
Right.
Whitey had to come.
Definitely.
But
sometimes the flashbacks went on for so long. I had to. Like, is this still a flashback? I
are we
can't
present
tell.
day?
Right. Let's start off with Alice is attacked by Native Americans after almost drowning. With her flashbacks,
That was
or
rough.
she didn't have a flashback; she had a story.
Yeah.
Did you guys think that those Native Americans were legit Native Americans, or do you think they
No.
were still a part of the Mormon disguise?
I mean, I don't. It was some. They definitely were disguised. I think. Do they not show them taking off their, when they're running away? I feel like there was something significantly that pointed to the fact that they weren't actually.
I
maybe not,
feel like
'cause
you're
they were
right, but
ki-
I can't
I
remember.
can't remember.
Exactly. But I left.
If
that
not
scene
gut,
thinking
yeah.
that
If
was-
not gut instinct, my reaction after was
And I
that I
think
thought.
Especially because they mention it so many times that they're like, nope, that was the Mormons dressed as
Yeah.
right.
as a native.
So that might be why
I'm
I
pretty
thought so too.
sure I read something online that they were.
They
We were
weren't.
the audience was
Okay.
supposed to know that yes, they were
and
disguised.
they have the buffalo head.
That's
that they
maybe
hand
what I was
over, I think.
thinking is my symbolism there, but
I think the most
I
important.
wasn't sure. Like I wasn't sure either way. Like if it was supposed to
Yeah.
be a disguise. Like I couldn't.
either way they were
Right.
terrible
I didn't
people.
know. I didn't know how significant it was.
It really
so I
was.
didn't pay
Yeah,
super close attention to it.
Mhm.
I think it's only significant for us as an audience member because we want proper representation.
right.
Otherwise, I'm pretty sure that scene was meant to tell us who Bill's shadow was,
Mhm.
which was his wife, who seemed badass.
Yeah.
We did not get enough of her.
No, but it was clear I
They were
left the show
partners.
thinking that yes, he absolutely loved her, and
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yes.
that it and that she that her passing, her childbirth, it makes more sense his relationship with his daughter, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, but one thing I questioned earlier was why does Bill and his wife, why do they take Alice and the people who had been, I guess, sort of enslaved to these disguised Native Americans to a
I can't pronounce
to
the name, but I'm
the
not
other
gonna
to the
try.
But
tribe.
like Alice's
Yes.
ex-husband, because he's right, because that's where they bring Alice, because that's how she meets
Yeah.
him. So maybe, and that's where the baby gets brought with Sadie in the beginning stages of the show.
So maybe Bill
They're
and his
just
wife
known
just
to
knew.
be
Okay.
people that, Because I'm sure they were already there living on the town. They knew of them, right?
I think
It was just interesting.
our culture has spent so much time painting them as these savages
Yeah.
that perhaps
could be
this was sort of
healers.
a intentional, like, we're not showing them as savagers. In fact, the Mormons and everybody who has crossed over and taken over the land were really the
Showing that,
savages.
yeah.
Right.
They might have been disguised as Native Americans in order to, like, not have it come back on them, but really, they were pretty helpful, and they wanted, they just wanted to
known
live.
as healers, and
Right.
yeah,
You know,
I agree.
I would think that's why they took them.
I mean, yeah,
I
it
agree.
totally makes sense. I'm glad. I mean, it clearly helped Alice, but I didn't know if
Yeah.
there was something I was missing. Or,
Right. It's a wonderful question, and if you guys have opinions on that, go ahead and leave a comment.
Yeah.
Because we have ours, and I'm sure you have some of your own. And then we get to see Roy as a child with his brother, and that whole storyline. Do you guys have opinions on that, or it was just a lot of exposition?
It was.
Yeah, I just feel like all of this is just to add color to the characters and show, like, their upbringing or whatever, like, things, like I said earlier, just to humanize them and make them more than just a villain.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely
Yeah.
think they could have been much shorter.
agree.
Every time we had a flashback, especially with Roy and Frank, they could have been shorter.
Mm-hmm. It just feels like a long tangent. Like, when you're watching it, and then you see a flashback, and you're like, okay, is it still flashback? Okay, wait,
Yeah.
where am I?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my god, like, it's so well done, but at the same time, it's exhausting binging. Like, if you spread it out, I should have spread it out when I watched it,
Right.
but having to binge watch it, it's just like, it's too much to take in all at once.
There was
Yeah.
a lot to take in, and I felt like watching the flashbacks, I really had to pay a lot of attention
That
because it's a
too.
flashback. So I'm thinking every moment in this flashback is really important to the story, and it
And then
was,
it wasn't really all that
No,
important.
It
Yeah,
wasn't.
it turns
That's
out.
meeting the quota for the 7 episodes.
Yeah, but when
Yeah.
you're watching it, you're
Minimum.
not sure if it's going to be important,
Yeah,
so you're like, wait,
like-
what?
yeah, did I miss that?
It's not a show you put on for background noise while you're
No.
doing 10 other things.
No.
It
Especially,
might be important if they have a season 2. Like, that's the only thing that I can wrap my head around. Why is it so much detail? And if they end up having a season 2.
Right.
But isn't it just the one?
as far as I
this is
understand,
it.
it's a limited
Yeah.
series, which is
That's
just
what I
this.
thought. But if
So-
it ever gets, like, if anything
up for
changes,
something,
then
yeah.
okay, you have a backstory that you can work
Yeah.
with. Other than that, it just didn't seem necessary. Like, usually when people put things in, it's to move the plot forward.
Yeah.
The plot could have still, like, moved forward had you
And
not
I
had
think
that background at all.
That just comes from it originally being a movie, I think,
Yeah.
and then making it into the series that it was.
I honestly
probably.
think the movie format would have done it much more justice.
Yeah,
That's what
or
I
maybe
think.
a shorter episode or less.
Yeah,
They didn't need to be
because
an hour.
if
20
it was like
minutes.
45-minute episodes,
Yeah.
honestly, I could get behind that because
Right.
they could have condensed.
They easily
certain
could have
things.
cut quite a few things, including young Roy after his brother's already left, and now he's gonna leave, and she hands him a book, says, "I really wish you'd learn how to read."
Yeah,
I thought that
We
was going
know
to be
that.
important.
I did too.
Yeah.
I
I
thought
did
the
too.
book would come back and
Yeah.
be relevant
I
in present
kept
day.
saying there's no way that he's bringing up that he wants to learn to read in exchange for something unless something happens in episodes
Yeah.
4,
Again, it was
5,
probably
like
more.
something. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. Like, nothing came full circle, I guess.
I mean, it did. He did read his letter from his brother.
yeah.
Which is
I mean,
the reason he sort of leaves Frank's gang, because he's getting
Okay,
teased
actually-
about it, and they call him up on his high horse or
Right.
something. So he kind of
Yeah.
has like
Good for
a
them.
So that definitely it comes back for that. So everything does have a
Yeah.
reason, but it's
I
just
thought it would be
a
more of an
lot
aha moment
yeah.
than that,
Right.
though. Like, I thought it would be like, oh, he saw
that's
this.
why,
Like,
yeah.
that's what I mean.
I feel
Like,
ya.
I get it. That's
Agreed.
a really good point. I just thought it would be, like, super critical for him to have that one
right.
skill.
That's the
Right.
other reason I don't think we needed that flashback where he gets the book, and we
Agreed.
did need the portion where he steals Frank's horse and is like taken under the wing, and they talk about the canyon and how Frank doesn't like being in a situation where you have people on either
Yeah.
side of you who can shoot you. I think that was important, that little sequence, but we didn't need the entire. It's everything. All the flashbacks are just too long.
Right.
Was that a play on words, like the people on either side who can shoot you, because you never know people's true alliances when there's money at stake?
It
or
totally could be.
other
Yeah.
things.
Definitely, and Frank has a constant fear of being betrayed, as we
Right.
see in another flashback. I'm not sure when, but Roy
Yeah.
is like,
One
it's
of
me,
the
it's
12.
me.
Yeah.
Because it felt literal and figurative, like when
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, and I do think, yes, I think the flashbacks could have been cut down a bit, but those were also the only, real opportunities for us to see a dynamic between Frank and Roy.
Yeah.
So I do think that, it was important, but yeah, perhaps it could have been, shaved down a bit. But I think that, and I think it also helped us sort of understand, it did help us understand Frank better. And it kind of, for me at least, eliminated this, idea of there's just good and there's just bad. I thought those moments did blur the lines a bit and was important.
We have the flashback where Frank picks up the Devlin twins.
Oh, yeah.
Who have murdered their entire family.
I knew I didn't like them.
Oh, no.
They're so creepy. They, to me, really creep me out.
But it's just, I really thought Frank would have murdered, I don't understand why he took them in. Do you guys have besides being psychotic, even though I get the whole, everyone's family, they don't have any left, but even if those blurred lines, wouldn't you not want psychopaths in your gang that could potentially...
I think you would.
That's
exactly.
True. I think he also likes
people
how they're
are willing to do anything.
Yeah,
right?
and they're also not. They're kind of slower, so I think he likes that appealing factor to them.
Control
Yeah,
them.
They're not going to turn on him.
That's true. Yeah, it was just the whole thing was.
He uses them as his psychopath shield.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Total power play there.
Was the baby necessary? Did we have to see
no,
that?
that was a very disturbing.
I think it was just to establish just how
gross
bad
they are.
Right.
It almost makes you think Frank's not that bad of a guy for like a split second.
Yeah, the Devlin twins are.
I don't understand, how are people actually capable of that? Is money, or was money back then?
Well, what money did they get out of that?
Well,
they lived in a little...
killing their
the
parents?
family?
That they made an
just in
offhand.
general, what is the is the motive? What is the purpose of doing something so vile? Is it
I don't think there really
kind of like a rite of passage when
it's
you're in a gang or when you're in
thing.
some sort of group that you have to prove how rough and tough you are?
Well, they weren't even in the gang
That's
yet.
what I'm saying. There was
so-
something they said.
What's the point?
There was an offhanded comment that people go crazy out here all by themselves, trapped with the same. Have you ever
With
been
your
on a
family.
roller coaster?
Sometimes the people you love grow to be the people you hate.
Yeah.
You're right. I didn't put the two together.
Which is sort of another, it's Roy loves Frank, but he's grown to hate him.
Right.
I feel you.
It's not
especially
really
back then. Yeah, it's not
we
cut
can talk
and dry.
about this later.
Yes.
So listen to our podcast. It's
Yeah.
great. But I think that's a question that's been asked throughout history, because how can you do something this bad? Especially not in a time of war when it's you or me.
Yeah, it's not like a last resort defense mechanism.
Right.
It's not like someone's threatening your existence.
Right.
So.
So, gosh.
Did you feel like this fit the bill for a true Western, or do you feel like there were elements of it that were very progressive? Because in some ways, they did want to shine light on the fact, of the Native American plight, racism. I felt like they tried to, squeeze in a couple things about... I don't know if they had an agenda for, gun control laws in the present day.
Right.
Just by saying, we're not going to teach you how to use guns, we're going to do it this way. Do you think that this stuck to the traditional old Western format that you see in present-day movies? I'm not talking about, movies back in the day, but, Coen Brothers films.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it was a bit of both, honestly. There was elements of, progressiveness, but also not enough. But then there was also elements of it being an old West, your typical. I think it really was just a combination.
I mean, I know we had an issue with, how the show was advertised, and then how it actually was with the, the women sort of having this power in the town, and we were hoping that they would be highlighted more than they were, but they were. At the end of the day, they were highlighted, and I thought the last episode we'll go into.
Shortly. Yeah.
I am happy with how they tied that in.
Agreed.
And again, yes, a lot of the female characters were sort of background characters, but there were themes within those characters and those situations that were absolutely progressive. That and maybe they're in past westerns, but I wouldn't be able to name it or that I'm aware of.
With that said, though, they did not treat our Buffalo Soldiers the way they should.
Right.
Which takes us into the last episode.
Which takes us into the last
scene.
episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna just jump we're gonna talk about the Buffalo Soldiers for a second, because all we see of these, what is supposed to be or rumored to be, extremely powerful black people in this time.
That everyone's afraid of,
Right.
or
That everyone's
supposed to be.
afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the father beating the daughter. Like after the whole her teaching Whitey how to play
the
the
Whitey
fiddle.
situation.
Right.
What we see is him beating his daughter, and then them get slaughtered.
Yeah.
That's what we see.
They
We see
barely
them
had a chance to put up a
debating.
fight.
Right.
Yeah. And I wanted to see that fight. I wanted to see what they had in them.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to see it.
I wanted them to kill at least one main character and his crew.
Yeah.
Exactly. All we saw was the end massacre. And especially when they came back and Alice sees, like, all the bodies on the yard. Like, that's all we get of them. These, like, supposed great warriors. And we just see lifeless bodies.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because obviously the scene before they are massacred, they're talking about going into LaBelle to try to see what they can do to help them. So, yeah, it was surprising that they were taken out so, brutally by Frank and his gang. But at the same time, they were outnumbered, and I'm curious what Scott Frank, the writer, like, what his thought was behind that. But that in that moment, it was realistic. I mean, if they somehow...
sure, they were outnumbered by Frank's men, but they were on their own territory.
Right.
They were well armed.
Right.
And yet I think we see a couple of his men get shot. They're not confirmed dead.
No.
Right.
They could have just been graze
Not
wounds
as brutally
or
as the Buffalo Soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what they were saying, the idea of a Buffalo Soldier, the reason they're called that is if when they're cornered, and
right, and they were cornered.
Yeah, and they fight fight back and they win.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they get hit, but they still survive. So yeah, you're right. It was not an accurate representation of the...
It was a very disappointing.
Yeah.
That portion was very disappointing. There was a
agree.
few other. We'll jump straight into, because we're running out of time,
battle scene.
to the shootout. As well as the Buffalo Soldiers murders being extremely disappointing.
Yeah.
Whitey's death.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't even have a chance. He comes out gunslinging and then just stabs him.
Doesn't even fire off his gun once.
Whitey deserved more of at least a little bit of a fight. Come on.
Yeah.
But I also... I think that's what we were expecting in a way. It was disappointing. It was heartbreaking.
Isn't it accurate?
But it was
Having a whole
also...
monologue?
It is, you're right.
Like every single movie
and
Western is a whole monologue
Yeah.
before the death, and this was like
Exactly.
Yeah.
That one hurt though.
It hurt.
Really did.
But I have to say, I expected a lot more death. So,
Agreed.
I mean,
you know...
I also liked that in that whole scene, did anyone pick up that almost all the men died and the only besides Bill and Roy, like the last few remaining men in this town all perished in this final fight.
Oh, that's right.
It was basically only the women that were left standing at the end because we lost Whitey, we lost the shop guy.
Oh,
I
right,
can't think of his
yeah.
name. Yeah.
But Grigg sticks around. John Doe sticks around.
Greg doesn't count.
Yeah. He's not a man.
He is still around.
Yeah.
And he's one of the bad guys.
And John Doe was an original man of LaBelle. He was,
Right.
yeah.
Which, remember we thought, we were hoping that John Doe would tie in somehow. He just disappeared completely.
I know, and then he
like,
pops
bye.
back in.
Yeah, I thought he was going to come back and be Roy's brother.
Yeah.
Or have
I did
some
too. More
form of,
significance.
like, relation because they
Yeah.
talked about him so much.
Right.
Yeah.
I think usually we're so used to movies in general being so connected and so
Yeah.
circular
And
from
shows,
beginning to end that with this, maybe in a way it was more of like a slice of life story, like a period piece where they didn't care about making it full circle. They cared about like telling a story with accuracy and
Yeah.
showing a different perspective.
I think
maybe.
like really the best part of that was how we had Alice and Maggie on the roof. Like
Yes.
really, they were the centerpiece of that whole. They were the show. They were badass.
They were badass.
I like the little moment where she helped Roy out. And he kind of looked up, and she was like, "Yeah, I got you."
Didn't
like
your
a
heart
sniper
just...
position
We didn't
there.
even talk about
she's so
Roy
good.
and Alice, coming together.
Yeah, short-lived, but they did.
Touching each other's scars.
Yeah, it was real quick, and then that was, that's all we get.
But yeah, I got
predicted
chills.
it,
We did.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
saw it coming from the first episode. So.
Yeah.
I mean,
Glad
so
it-
much
I'm glad
tension.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
We got to see that moment.
I do love that one of the twins says, "Hello, ladies," and Maggie just shoots
Yeah.
him.
Yes.
Bye. And
I
he's
was
like,
like,
you!
So we're getting into this right now. Let's go.
I know, that was quick.
That was quick, and it was a great shootout. It was really well shot. We had
No
It
pun
was
intended.
really well shot,
Yeah.
though.
That last scene took 3 weeks to shoot, by the way.
that
Wow.
The shootout took 3 weeks
It's a
to
nice little
shoot.
tidbit.
Wow.
And apparently the reason, part of why it took so long is actually that scene specifically, there were a lot of lightning storms, so they would be in the middle of it and they'd stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Shootout was amazing. We lost a couple of women, none of whom we really had any.
No,
invested
the
in,
main
yeah.
women were all standing at the
And
end,
they were
yeah.
all badass.
Yeah.
The
Martha.
Walking out of
was
that
amazing.
motel.
I
yes.
loved her. I really yes, you were saying that. She was one of the characters that I ended up leaving the show thinking I want to know more about her.
Yeah, she was
She's
great.
so interesting, and then her connection with the deputy
She
comes
comes-
to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Overall, I like that we got that with the women at the end. That
Yes.
was
Right.
we finally got
It
some
was-
We needed
juice.
that.
Yeah.
It was a slight redemption
Yes.
for the miss. marketing.
Agreed. Slight. Yes.
Slight. The men come and they
help.
help
Yeah.
save, including Bill, who sees his shadow, which I think is very
That
important.
was so significant.
It
Yes.
was a big, long shadow.
And it was a quick and back.
Yeah.
I'm
Not
ready.
bad, yeah.
I think that was important. They win. Everybody's dead except for Frank, and Roy goes running off after
Yes.
Frank.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, during the shootout, did you all notice Frank just sitting on his horse with bullets flying
I think
everywhere
that has to do with
and just
him.
sitting?
This isn't how I'm gonna die.
Again,
his whole spiel.
yes,
Yeah.
He's immune to death. There was another scene where it was like he was immune to death.
It was the
The smallpox.
and the
It's a
the first
frequent throughout
murder.
the whole show
Yeah.
because of how it ends. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Roy goes after Frank. Frank has found Truckee.
Full circle.
Is starting to indoctrinate.
Do you
him
have a puppy?
already? Yeah.
Yeah, creepo.
Gross.
Yeah, get away
like he
from
did
him,
with
Truckee.
Roy.
Right.
Yeah.
God.
And Roy comes to the rescue.
Yes.
And we have the final showdown between Frank and Roy. Did you think either of them would live, or both of them would live, or both of them would die? What were your...
I just assumed overall that Roy was not going to live. In that exact moment, I sort of wasn't sure, but I thought it was a bit anticlimactic. I
I thought it would be both of them, but at different times. Like, I thought it would be, like, Roy first, and then, like,
Like the
there's a
last minute.
shot, and
Yeah.
then, like,
Yeah.
whatever,
Right,
and then
someone-
the end scene, dramatic, whatever,
Right,
and then
yeah.
you see a snake, but I don't know. Like,
some bees. And,
Yeah.
Whatever.
I
Like,
feel the
sprinkle
same
in
way,
the
but I also
symbolism.
I didn't like that it was so predictable. Like we just knew that was. I would have rathered maybe a girl from LaBelle ended
Yeah.
in Truckee. Anyone different than what you were assuming was going to happen the whole time that it would be.
Right.
is
Roy.
that
But
classic
it was
of a
his
Western?
battle
It
to
is.
fight.
It was,
Maybe
yeah.
That's the thing.
It couldn't be anyone else at the end of the day, but it was just
Right.
we all knew it was coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that was their nod to the classic Western. Yeah, we're
And I
just gonna
liked
do a
his
good
little.
old-
It's not supposed to
But also
happen
just,
this
like-
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Double
I didn't
meaning
this
there,
is how
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
And what did he say? He was just like, "Well, think again, or
Like,
you were
this is-
wrong."
You were
yeah.
wrong. It was
Oh,
something
yeah.
you were wrong.
There's always, like, dialogue. Like, no one just wants to, like, shoot.
And die.
Shut
Like,
up.
just
They wanna
slowly
get the
go.
Like, I just want there to be a Western where someone's, like, talking and explaining something and just gets shot. Like,
Done.
doesn't get to finish
Done,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wait, I just wanted to get a word in.
Right.
Oh,
Come
that's
on,
so
man.
funny.
So Roy survives, and the town of LaBelle grieves their losses significantly. Whitey and the preacher shows up finally.
Yeah. Where were you, buddy?
And well, he's here now.
Nice to- thanks for
Sadie
showing up.
Rose.
Perfect timing.
I thought it was significant that Sadie Rose said, you're too late.
Yeah, when she's the
Yeah.
one that's been waiting.
Mhm.
It was very
And Roy leaves the money for Alice.
Yes.
beautiful.
In
Where
the post.
we thought it was,
I
yeah.
mean, he hadn't put it in the post yet when we thought that's
But
where
Right.
it But he did
Ultimately,
leave it.
yes.
Yes.
was.
And then
so, yeah.
there's like a 20-minute montage of
Him
Roy
cruising
galloping
to the
California.
Which was super frustrating because I wanted that was another waste of time.
Like
really.
Alice and Bill live happily ever after.
We could have seen
yeah.
him. We could have seen him riding off into the sunset with the knowledge that he's going to California.
Like we all
and it
know.
would have been done.
Do we know the exact year that this is supposed to take place?
1880s is what we know.
88 or
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I kept saying like Gold Rush, California, like what? Because I know that's 1848.
Yeah.
And I'm like what? Like why California?
His brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His brother.
But that's all we've got for you guys tonight.
Wow.
We're out of time. Thank you so much for listening to us talk about a wonderful show and all of our wonderful opinions and crazy ideas. Why don't you guys go ahead and tell them where they can find you?
Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Ashley Sullivan. You can find me on Twitter at AshleySX.
Yeah, I promise I'm not really a hater, guys. I just wanted to point out like some of my criticisms, but you guys can find me on Instagram at Mina Makes Magic.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Krista Flentje.
And you can find me at Natalee Dyer, Nataledyer, on all social media platforms. Thank you so much. Leave comments. Let us know what your thoughts of the show was. And we'll see you on the next show.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.